Hello and welcome to another episode of the Appelboom Bites podcast, the most amazing podcast about pens. And welcome back. Today is episode number 39 already, and we have two amazing guests on the show. First, let me introduce our co-host for today. It is the one and only Hemingway Jones, aka Tim Steiner. Welcome, Tim. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me. Having a blast doing this with you all month. It's super
Yes,
fun. Love being a
it's
co-host. It's nice to have the focus on someone else, so I'm enjoying this.
Yes, you can just sit there, play around, give some comments, and I think you have the best job of all of us.
I really get to enjoy this, and there's very little pressure on me, so I'm doing
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
that's good. That's good. Unfortunately, last week didn't go through because we had a cancellation of Visconti last minute, but we will reschedule that, and for everybody that missed that part and is really disappointed about that, it will come back. So no worries, no worries. But today we have another amazing guest. It is the one and only Ian Schon from Schon Design or Schon Design. Welcome, Ian. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, everybody.
It's so
Nice.
great to have you here. So, about your last name, how do you pronounce it?
It's pronounced Schon.
Schon,
Like,
okay.
yeah, like
And it's
someone
not
showing
schön,
something.
like
Schon,
in
yeah.
German.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will try to do it the best way I can. But before we start this whole podcast thing, we always do the pen check, and I would like to ask Hemingway Jones, can you do your pen check first, please?
The pen check.
I'd be happy to. And in honor of our guest, I have my Schon Design Copper Pocket 6. It was a birthday present from my wife. It's a stub nib, and it's really fun. She bought it for me because, Ian, we're from the same town. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. So she wanted me to have a
Oh,
Philadelphia-based fountain pen, and it's absolutely brilliant. It gets really small, which is handy, and it's nice to have that large nib in a really tidy, tough package. So fantastic pen.
that's really cool. It's really cool. So you're from Philadelphia originally.
I am indeed. So
It's
you
great. It's a
can
great
blame my
city.
accent on that. It absolutely is. I'm excited to get back. I haven't been down in about a year. But fantastic institutions, one of the best art museums anywhere. More than just the rocky steps, people. Go inside the building. Don't just run up the stairs.
Oh, is that stairs where the museum is?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where Rocky ended his jog. So you can just sit there and watch a parade of people running up the stairs and pumping their arms in the air. And I try to encourage some of them to actually go into the building.
It's a spectacular museum. Yeah, like you
Truly.
said. I have a membership there, and I
Oh,
take my
great.
son there all the time. It's amazing. That's one of my favorite places to go. And yeah, it's quite a hoot seeing everybody running up and down the stairs.
Yep. They don't do the rest of
It's
the
an iconic
run. They
stairs.
just do the end. Yeah,
Yeah, just the end,
exactly. Yeah.
It's an iconic stairs, that's for sure. Ian, can you show us your pen check for today? Which fountain
Yeah.
pen are you writing with?
Cool. I am writing with a faceted brass
Ooh.
pocket 6. So it's a pen almost identical to Tim's pen, except it has all of these tiny milled facets. And we'll include a picture in the show notes. And on it, I have, of course, we have a Monoc nib.
Nice.
I can't help myself. I love this pen.
Yeah.
And this exact pen, even before the Monoc, I think it's been in my pocket ever since we made this. So maybe that's like 3 years or something. But I'm kind of a one pen guy. So this is like
Wow.
my pen, and I put a Monoc in it, and I'm happy. Every once in a while, I'll carry also a ballpoint and something like this, but I really like this pen.
Nicely
If
done.
you design something new, do you carry it around with you to test it, or how does that work?
That's a great question. I do, but usually I'll have like a backup pen or like something for comfort, something to compare it to. But yeah, I normally will have like 3 or 4 pens like clipped to my my pockets or like in a pen case flying around. We have a bunch of rickshaw cases in the shop that we'll throw in our backpacks. We'll commute to and from work to test them and stuff like this. But yeah, it's always fun to
But
carry new
eventually
things.
you always use the same pen.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. If I had to stop making pens, I would have this pen, and that's
It's a
okay.
good one. Yeah, it's a great pen. Yeah,
I feel
well done.
like that. Thank you. The feeling of like it's enough for me is okay. I'm not a huge collector of things. I could be, but in this stage of my life, I'm not. So I'm kind of just happy with like one thing. And when I designed pens initially, it was kind of like, let's make one pen. And I can't believe I've made more pens. It's cool, but I didn't intend to. So
Yeah, you already did a great job on making so many pens, but we will talk about that later. First, let's do my pen check before I forget it. Sometimes I do. So I have today with me the Opus 88. So not a pen from you, Ian, unfortunately. We will talk about that later, why I don't have it. So you can already think about that question. But I have an Opus 88. It's a Sapphire Demo. It's a blue pen. It completely matches my outfit, which is really nice, coincidentally. It's quite fun because it's called a demo, but you cannot see the ink level at all because it's an opaque body. So it has some glittering inside. I think that Opus did a really nice job on it. It's an eyedropper filler, so a lot of ink it can be inside this fountain pen. And I just need your help, guys. What ink should I put in here? Let me know in the comments below what you think I should put into this amazing fountain pen. So, Ian, tell me, why don't I have Schon pens from you?
Controversy already.
yeah, it's hot in here. It's really hot. I'm gonna turn on the. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I've met you once before.
The connection gets lost, or what's happening?
Yeah, but breaking up. No, I think we met one time at the DC Pen Show. I think briefly.
Yes,
you were very kind to me. Mm-hmm. You did invite me to dinner. For the record, I'm sorry that I didn't join you, but I felt very warm. I felt connected. I felt like I wanted to take my pen out of my pocket and just hand it to you at that moment. But I was so overwhelmed with joy in meeting you that I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was so embarrassed. But that's why you don't have one, because I was embarrassed to hand over my.
We will work on that. We will work on that.
Joost gives out cookies. He's famous for stoof waffles. Yeah.
Oh.
Your cookies, Joost. That's what
the
you
only
usually
thing
give
that I'm
out.
famous for.
No, I wouldn't say.
All right. Let's have a look at the question from our previous guest, which was Nikhil Ranjan, the new CEO from Shaver. And he has a question for you, Ian, because his question was, what makes you passionate about pens?
Great question. I like making things that people get to use. Making anything like that's a tool. When I get a customer email where they say, I bought your pen and I've been using it every day for a whole year and a half, or I put it through the washing machine and it's fine, or some story about how they're using it and how they're happy with the use, that really fires me up and continues to propel me forward. So I like making pens because I think, I have some collectors who collect the pens and they don't use them as much, but most of my pens, people really use. They really use them, and they're really tools, and it brings me great joy whenever someone comes to a trade show and they say, I've had this in my pocket ever since I bought it from you last year at the trade show. And it's like, I can't describe that feeling, but if there's any other makers or people who make anything out there, like, this feeling of like, wow, I'm not just making something to sit in the closet. It's like really being used. It feels good. So that propels me forward for sure.
I can imagine that that's quite a special feeling, that you created something that people have in their hands like every day.
Yeah, and it helps them, have good, maybe they're journaling and it helps them have good mental health, or helps them keep track of their day, or write letters to friends, or just draw beautiful pictures. Like, it's a good one to make. Like, pens are nice for this reason.
Really?
I have a question. You sold already like millions of pens, right? Have you already stumbled upon one in the wild? So you were just having a coffee or going to the supermarket and then saw somebody using your pen?
That's a good question. I don't think I've sold quite millions. I think I've sold a little bit, just slightly. I'm just slightly.
Yeah, trillions. Sorry, trillions, of course.
Yeah, 100 billion is more accurate. But no, I haven't seen one like randomly. But I was at a bicycle event because I used to be a big cyclist and I would race bikes. So I had this cycling community and they knew that I made pens. So many of them supported me when I did my first Kickstarter in 2012, 2011, I forget. And then 2017 when I did my second one. So this community always kind of supported me, which is strange because when you think about bicycles, you don't necessarily think about pens. But for me, it's a big connection. So I was at a bicycling event and I saw someone had one of the pens and they were kind of just like holding it in their hand. And I was like, oh my God, you have one of my pens. And he's like, oh, well, and we connected and we had realized that we actually knew each other from bicycle racing like many, many years ago. And it was a beautiful connection. So not quite at the supermarket or out in the wild, but in this small community, I do see them around.
This is quite a surprising place. Yes.
You have
was
to
cool.
say,
It's
hey, that's
really
my
nice.
pen.
That's my pen.
And then when they go, what do you mean I bought it? You say, no, I made it.
That's my pen. It's my
That's
heart
right.
and soul in there.
Yep, exactly. Well done.
Because I want to talk about that as well. So what you do is you're doing the designs and you also do the manufacturing process, right? So you do like everything in-house except the converters, but okay, I will give you that. But that's also quite unique nowadays, right? So from the nib, the body, caps, everything is in-house.
Correct. It didn't, of course, start out this way. Well, you know, it's funny. It kind of did. When I started making pens in 2010, I was in a garage like many other pen makers with one lathe, you know, without a CNC, without a production facility, just a hobby, making a pen, and then you put an ink cartridge in it, and that's the pen. You make everything but the ink cartridge. And then as I decided to continue down this project, I actually, for a while, I stopped making the pens. My ballpoints were made by a local company in Massachusetts for like a number of years, maybe 5 years. And they were machined by them. I came up with the design. I did the engineering. I provided prototypes. They would machine them and I would pick them up. We'd have a good conversation about the batch and what went wrong, what we could do better next time, etc. And I would go to fashion shows and sell them around and stuff like this. But now, as I decided to quit my job in 2017 and go full-time into pens, I said the first thing we're going to do is bring manufacturing in-house. So now it is true, we do make our pen bodies, pen caps, sections, grips. We make our nibs. So we make everything besides the converter and the rubber O-rings and the ink. But in the future, you know, it's funny, like it would be really nice to do an entirely, including like filling mechanism, everything in-house. But our philosophy and my philosophy with pens and with many things in life is that you really should like crawl, walk, run. And we're a bigger company now. We have 6 CNC lathes and we have this big 3,000 square foot space and I've got employees. It's wild, but we don't want to get too far ahead or try and do too much because I like to have like a calm lifestyle and there's plenty of reasons that it's not calm. So we're trying to keep our chaos like manageable. And we decided, it's a funny story, I'll tell it anyway, even though it's kind of off the question a little bit, but when I used to make watches, I had a watch manufacturing company.
Oh, wow.
And I started with the case. I would make the case, and then I make the dial, and I make the hands. Then I made a sub-dial complication for the seconds called a running indicator. We can show some photos of this. It was a beautiful project. It took a lot of me to produce this, but I never made the movement. And when I would go to collecting events like Red Bar and I'd show it around, people were like, why didn't you start with the movement? It's the heart of the watch. It's the most important piece. And of course, it's extremely complicated to make a watch movement. And even many brands who make their watch movements in-house don't really produce all the parts in-house, you know, because it's a very complicated project. So my learnings from the watch industry was that everyone wants me to make the heart of the thing. So when I said, okay, we make the pen bodies, we make the pen caps, one day we have to make the nibs. We have to, because that's the core of it. So instead of jumping into filling mechanisms as our second step, which would have been a little bit easier for us, just based on our equipment and based on my knowledge of manufacturing and engineering stuff, I decided to just dive deep into the nibs, and it was the right decision for us. So we're really happy with what we've produced here today in this room. Every Monoc nib has been produced in this room here, which is kind of wild. Like I can feel it, you know.
Because that Monoc nib, it's wild, you know. I heard a lot of people talking about it. I think it's one of the greatest inventions, like from the last few years.
Thank you. I'll show you. I have a
wholly
piece
revolutionary.
Here. Thank you. I have a just because we can do a little tour, but like just because it's hard to show everything on the video here. You know, I have this demo piece that I take to trade shows, which is a Monoc that we didn't finish machining, but it shows you that it's from a solid bar. You know, and
wow.
that's the piece that I think it's like it's impractical. It's weird to machine it from a solid bar. There are benefits, but it's not an industrialized product. This is really a passion project. You would never start a business and say, we are going to machine our nibs from a solid bar, because it doesn't make sense. But it's what we do, and it's uniquely ours. It's a very, very strange approach. And if you think about the history of fountain pens, where things became more efficient, we injection molded our feeds, we made our housing standardized, like these are great innovations that happened in the past to make fountain pens and pens in general before ballpoints accessible to everyone. So to have a moment in time where we say, okay, why do people write with a fountain pen? What makes them love fountain pens? How do we do something that fits with the modern customer that's different? And it's not that it's better, you know, it's just different, right? How do we make people feel something? And you take all that efficiency and you say, well, what if we removed all that? And we said, let's make it the least efficient way possible, but just cool, you know? And you think about like an F1 car, it's very different. The way they make the body, the monobody in a lot of those cars is very different from the way they make a Toyota. And neither one is like better. They're just different tools. They're different things. And some people who can like a Toyota can also like a F1, vice versa. So it's like a nice analog, but yeah, we just wanted to put the love back into it and just like try and do something really wild to make people say, wow, that's cool. It might not be for me, or maybe it's too expensive, or I love it, I need to have it. Whatever your reaction is okay. But we just wanted to do something different. And I feel really lucky to have been at this moment in time in fountain pens to be able to produce this with this amazing community surrounding me to help support me do such a weird thing. Because it wouldn't have been so successful in other periods of time.
How long did this process take for you to create it?
It's a great question. I think there's like a couple of different answers. So I'll give you like some specifics. But this design of this fountain pen goes back to like the beginning. Before I even made a Jovo nibbed fountain pen, this design was, of course, on the table, because any designer, if you're a student or you're a professional or you work for a big brand or a small brand, whatever, if you are designing a fountain pen, you're going to say, I want to design the nib. The nib's got to have something special. You never say, for this fountain pen, I want the most basic, simple nib. Any designer would push the team to try and get the most interesting nib because it's the heart of the pen. So these sketches with like integrated nibs come from like the Mayu, the Murex, the T1, like all those integrated pens were so, when I like looked up fountain pens and I saw those, I was like, that's it. That for me like has this big feeling. And I'm like, wow, that's where maybe innovation was like it was like really cresting for those brands, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know. It was like, the sketches started to come from that. What if we could do an integrated one? Why isn't that in production anymore? But the Monoc, like hardcore, when I said, okay, let's start spending some money. Let's get some machinery in. Let's get some tooling. Let's start to come up with our entire manufacturing approach. Maybe that was like 2 years, start to finish. But we had a couple like false starts before that where I actually had, right now we use lathes with milling capability. We start with the bar, we mill and we turn in one machine. That's like a good process for this, for us at least. Before, we were actually milling them out of plates. We had titanium plates and we'd mill the titanium and then we'd form it more like a traditional nib. But I had a couple of the things that are in the Monoc were in those nibs as well. And I decided, you know what, this isn't the right start. Let's ditch that. Let's start something else. So, and we're still like, now we're still in our infancy because we just produced a fine nib. We launched it last week, the fine Monoc. And we had it at the San Francisco Pen Show, but we're still really careful about how we produce, what we produce, and what we promise to our customers, because we want to be here for as long as we can, and we don't want people to be disappointed. But it's strange for a brand to come out with a product and not have all the sizes, especially for nibs. We had a medium,
Oh.
And like for a fountain pen
Well,
brand to only come out with a medium, it's crazy.
no, but
Yeah.
I know a few brands that offer fountain pens just with a medium nib, so it's not that
Oh,
strange.
cool.
Yeah, or
I
fine and
stand corrected.
medium. Yeah, they'll just do like two when they first come out.
Oh,
What do
Yeah.
you use? Are you using a tipping on the titanium, or is it titanium on the writing surface?
Amazing question. The titanium that we use for this pen is very hard. So we opted against using tipping material because
Okay.
we have less control over the shape. For a while, I like really hummed and hawed over this one. It's a tough decision to make. But if you think about the modern customer for a fountain pen, even if you're like me and you have like one fountain pen, we're not faced with the same challenge in developing a fountain pen nib that we were in the past. In the past, people would buy one fountain pen, they needed to last 20 years, and the quality of the paper is different. And you need a really, really hard tip. There are other benefits to hard tipping besides durability, right? It's not just the durability. But for us, we said, okay, what's hard enough? If I use a special grade of titanium, we use a grade 23 extra low interstitial. It's Eli. It's like a medical grade of titanium. It's really, really nice. And it's very hard. If you look it up on the charts, where it, how it compares to tungsten or other really tough materials, it's a very hard material.
Wow.
But it's not as durable as like carbide or something like this. But as we know, modern fountain pen companies don't even really use iridium anymore. They use a different tipping material manufactured for them. That's quite hard, but I digress. We decided that this material was hard enough. And I believe it is, because the modern fountain pen customer doesn't take, all of their correspondence with one pen for 25 years. They're switching between multiple pens. They're doing some emails. They're not always,
very true. Yeah.
It's a very different challenge. So I said, why? I wanted to really start with a blank sheet of paper. And if you think about like the F1 analogy again, when you think about performance and what we can provide, if we throw away the need for making it like everything else, you can really start to think outside of the box. So this material is very hard. And with all the Monox, we produce like a very big tipping shape. If you look at the photos, there's a lot of meat there. And what's unique about that is you can grind this thing multiple times over the course of its lifetime to produce a different writing experience. And what I've noticed with my customers, even with a Jovo nib, at the pen shows, they love to grind the nibs and regrind. And it's just, it's a part of our culture. So we have to support it with the product. So I said, okay, I need to make something where my friends, Mark Bacchus, Gina, Josh, they can grind these nibs to produce something that fits into what people want. And of course want to grind them something that's great to write with off the gun. When we produce something and we send it to them, it should write fantastically. But we should also support that people are going to grind it. So we thought about all these criteria, and we thought about what equipment we need to buy. And I said, you know what? Let's just make it out of hard titanium, and I think it's going to be awesome. And we've had very few complaints so far, which has been really nice. And I've been taking care of all of our customers really well, and they've been giving me amazing feedback over the course of the last year in producing them, helping me understand the way they feel when they open up this pen, the way they feel when they ink it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. It's been a really fun experience. So
great.
Ian, I hear you talk a lot about designing, but you also do the engineering part, right? What do you, how do you feel yourself more, as a designer or engineer, or?
Ooh, I would definitely consider myself more of an engineer. And there are moments in my pen manufacturing time that I struggle with design. And it's interesting, like my background is in mechanical and manufacturing engineering, and I'm very much tied to the machines. I program the machines, I set them up, I pick the tooling, I think about strategy, which cutters are we going to use, how are we going to remove material, what do we start with, like what are the constraints, how do we build our manufacturing flow from end to end. I love this. But I also, I worked as a product designer at a company called IDEO, and we did consumer product development, and it was a great experience, and it gave me exposure to some incredible industrial designers. And from that, it gave me enough design chops that I'm able to like kind of hang in this space. But there are moments when I'm like, wow, I don't know. And I'll send a text to one of my friends from the design industry who's still working in design. I'll be like, hey, what do you think of this? What should I do here? I'll Zoom someone. And thankfully I've got the community of professional designers to help me with these things when I need help, but definitely
really
more of an
helpful.
engineer. But like, I don't know, like if you had to build, like, let's say I were to leave Schon Design today and I say, hey, everybody, I'm done. You're gonna have to build a team to
You
replace
retire,
me.
you go to Hawaii and just live the life.
Surf every day, me and my son. That's the life. So anyways, if I were to leave, how would they replace? This is like going to sound a little bit weird, but I don't know. It's going to sound strange, so I'm sorry. But like, how would you replace me? You would need to hire an engineer. You would need to hire a production manager. You would need to hire a programmer. You would need to hire someone to grind the nibs. You would need to build quite a big team or a group of consultants to do these. You'd have to restructure the organization. So I think like my strength and what I bring with Schon Design to the community is that I do all these things in an integrative approach, and I really pour myself into it and use my multidisciplinary skill set from my past life as a design engineer and as a product designer to give you something that's cohesive. Because oftentimes in production and in manufacturing, the biggest challenge is to make a harmony between the engineering and the design, and to make the industrial designers play well with the machinists and the machinists play well with the engineers. There's always like a tension there. It's traditional.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it's hard to break down those walls. So for me, I don't have to, because it's like I'm thinking about the tooling when I design the aesthetics. And when I'm thinking about the aesthetics, I'm like, okay, how are we going to manage this in production? Okay, what's the cost? So I can work a little bit faster, and I can look at the machine and I can be like, okay, I think we can fit this in here like this, and here's how we're going to manage these little details. And it enables me to do concepts that are like very radical. Like I'll show you, I have a prototype on my desk. I actually wasn't intending on showing this, but I'm going to show it anyway because it's kind of fun.
Nice. World exclusive.
We always love prototypes.
I haven't shown it to anyone. But we were working on a concept. We have a new pen that's like made of titanium, and I'll show it in a little bit. But you can see there's like a circle here. I don't know how easy it is to see.
Yeah,
Let's go back. Maybe this one's better. But we have like these textures inside of these circles. And it's the design in titanium. It's like these textured surfaces are really cool. And what's unique about this is that like it's a big programming challenge to come up with a way to make a texture. Like a designer can sketch it and say, this is what I want. That's fine. But then you say, okay, how do we convert that to something the machine can understand? And something that we can manufacture efficiently, or if not efficiently, like how do we charge for it? And you think about these crazy concepts that are awesome and we want them to exist. And the roadblocks, there are many roadblocks, even if you have a team that works together nicely. So for me, to integrate the design and the engineering and manufacturing approach here enables a lot of these designs to come to life. It takes time. This is why this is not on the market yet. There's a lot of challenges in finishing that project, but it might get there. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because I didn't disappoint the rest of the team. Maybe I just disappointed myself.
I feel like there's a lot of prototypes lying around, because you're obviously very passionate. I imagine you're always working on new ideas.
Yeah, this is a cool one. Oh, this is another cool one. This is one of the clips for our new titanium pens, and it's got like all this cool like texture banding, and it's got anodized color that we well, this one's not anodized, but it's a little bit. But anyways, we have these, there's just stuff all over my desk, like different way, like samples of manufacturing when we were machining our titanium clips, and the first ones are like always really rough and they're like not quite resolved, but it's all here. It's all on my desk because it reminds me how I need to finish this project. I need to keep going, or it's sitting here because I need to spend some time in the CAD model and resolve some details and then go and reprogram it or what have you. So there's stuff everywhere. There's like always new cleaning tools.
There's always new products coming up.
Yeah, there has to be.
There's always.
We have Tim. I sent you some of these in the past.
Yes. Yep.
But this is our cleaning tool. You'll notice it's a little bit different. This one's clear and it's got like a black band on the outside. Some of the feedback I received from yourself and from many people in the community is that these needed to be easier to identify the different brands, which one's which, right?
Yeah, like color coding or something. Yeah.
You had mentioned color coding, and I sat with it for a while, and I said, well, I can't order this material in all these different colors and have the same properties, or I'm not a big enough manufacturer to buy custom colored material. And I was like really struggling with it. I was just like, this is what the people want. It's not just Tim, I've heard this many times. I was like, how do I get that? And I came up with this idea to use like this is like fresh. This isn't even out yet.
Oh,
I have
nice.
these special tubes that are heat
nice.
shrink, and they go on the outside of the lure, the cleaning tool, and it enables you to say, okay, well, yellow is sailor, and green is for pilot.
There you go.
That's
and
smart.
blue is for, and it achieves the same thing, but it allows us to have an efficient manufacturing. So again, like maybe if I had if there was a designer here, maybe they would say, every single lure needs to be of a different color material, and it must be this way. And the engineer, would sit there and be like, I don't know where we can find the material, so we have to make it custom. And then it goes to the CEO, and they see the budget for making the custom material, and they kill the project.
Yeah.
But because I have the flexibility to say, okay, well, I wish it could be one color solid. It can't be. Maybe we'll put something on the outside. Like, we have this flexibility to get it done, to get what the people want, the consumers want,
creative
but also
solutions.
to get what the manufacturer wants, but also to get what is viable.
That's a great collaboration. But it's like all in your head, this fight between all these different camps, and then eventually it's one person who can make the decision. So that's really cool. That's really cool.
He's also,
sometimes,
he's very he's very schizophrenic in that sense.
I have different hats that I wear, and I put them on, and I look across the shop.
That's really cool. That's really cool. But I need to move on, and I need to talk about some new products coming up.
New products.
So you already talked about a few products, but I also have two products that I would like to mention, which are on the Appelboom.com website right now. And one of them is an amazing Montegrappa. And as we know from Montegrappa, they create the most beautiful pieces. They did so again for this limited edition, which honors the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin. In 1859, Darwin revolutionized the human understanding of the natural world with his publication on the origin of species. This work still echoes throughout biology, anthropology, philosophy, and beyond. And with this limited edition of only 165 pieces, Montegrappa delivers another masterpiece. The classical craft of lost wax castings has been used to highlight Darwin's landmark findings, with the architecture of a building conceived as a cathedral to nature. On the reverse face, figures references these observations of Galapagos finches and tortoises of giraffes as proof of natural selection and his famous tree of life. On the opposite face, science continuation of Darwin's work is illustrated by frames depicting stages in human evolution, all detailed in vermeil. Also realized in vermeil is a concealed ape skull studded with rubies. A peekaboo case mounted on the vinyl features mirror-polished silver on the inside lid, allowing writers to contemplate their own revolutionary journey. The 18-karat gold two-tone nib has a custom nib decoration reproducing the Darwin's Tree of Life motif. Of course, this wonderful edition comes in a wonderful gift box, crafted from oak veneer with a brass Charles Darwin nameplate. Hemingway Jones, you have seen this piece. What do you think of this spectacular Montegrappa?
It is spectacular. It's just absolutely amazing. I'm a big fan of Charles Darwin. Might have to pop in your Boston store and play with this one. It looks really gorgeous.
How many can I order for you?
Make a fantastic gift. Yeah, right. Sincerely. Might have to take a home equity out of my house, but it is a wonderful, wonderful pen.
What do you think, Ian, as with your designer cap on?
I'm blown away. I didn't notice the ape skull before until you mentioned it, and I'm clicking through the photos, and I'm like, wow, that is a cool detail.
It's a really cool detail. I have seen it in real life a few months ago when I visited the Montegrappa factory, and it was really like, wow. You know, it's if you have the money, because it's quite an expensive piece, maybe for some of us, we don't all have this kind of money in our back pocket. But if you have the money, you should definitely look into this, because this is really crazy. All right, let's have a look at our second new product that I would like to announce. It is also from an Italian brand. It is an Aurora, and the iconic Aurora 88 is reborn in Ebonite for an even more refined and elegant version. Ebonite is the ancient material from which the first fountain pens were born, which returns today as a refined and precious element. Ebonite is a brand name for a material generically known as hard rubber, obtained via vulcanizing natural rubber for prolonged periods. The Aurora 88 Ebonite is a limited edition series that will become available in 3 different colors. Each color is limited to only 288 pieces worldwide, so this is quite limited. And the first edition of the series is made with yellow marbled ebonite and yellow gold plated metal details. The other 2 will be made with a brownish and a green-blue ebonite. The fountain pen has an 18-karat gold nib and it is using a piston filling mechanism. Hemingway Jones, what do you think of this pen?
I love Ebonite, and I'm a big fan of Aurora. I just got my first Aurora pen, and I really love it. Ebonite, particularly, I love that it has a long history in pens, like those early Waterman pens or hard rubber, and the lightness of it, the tactile feel, how it stays warm in your hand. It's just a really nice material to make a pen, and this one is particularly beautiful. So that could go on one of my lists. It's definitely a nice pen.
Ian, what do you think of this? Ebonite. That's an interesting material.
I'm gonna echo Tim on this one. I like the warmth of ebonite. I'm not very familiar with it in person, but when I've seen it on other pens that use the material, I think it's fantastic. It's really cool. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful for sure. That's for sure. Hemingway Jones, do you have a question for Ian?
I probably have many questions for Ian, but I'll try to keep it narrow. But, I'm curious about some things, Ian, like very forward-looking, the other types of materials that you'd like to explore. I'm thinking specifically if you've looked at doing some gold nibs. Like one of the most elusive things in fountain pen world is trying to get that old ideal number 2 flexible gold nib feel in a modern pen. And you're the type of guy I could see taking on a project like that. So I'm just curious, pen barrel material, nib material, and then I'm also going to ask you where you get your cheesesteaks.
No pressure at all. No pressure at all.
These are good questions. The last one is a very hotly debated topip.
It is in Philadelphia circles. It is indeed.
That's right.
I'm a Jim's guy, by the way, but go ahead.
All right, nice. Well, it's good to know where you stand here. Yeah. So I'll answer the last question first. Okay. I actually, I'm not, because I moved here in 2019, I don't have the experience to really say which house I firmly sit with when it comes to cheesesteaks. Sure. But I do enjoy them when I have them, and I usually just kind of draft the locals. I just don't have the knowledge to make a comment as to where my heart is. Just
the local places.
This is a really political correct answer, Ian. Come on.
No, but it makes sense though. It's like if you're traveling around the world and you want a good meal, it's always a good idea to ask like the fireman or the policeman, like what's a good restaurant? Not the touristy ones, but where they go, because they're going to know an inexpensive, fantastic place to go.
Yeah, and there's a lot across the city, and there's a lot of good places to get a steak sandwich, and it's there's a lot there. But you're right, you got to ask the locals, and that's what I usually lean on, and I'm not usually disappointed when I do so.
Well done.
But yeah, so let's talk about gold nibs for a bit, because it's one of those things that people have put across my plate a lot. When they saw the Monoc nib, they said, well, when are you going to work on gold nibs? Because that's really, when you think about the language of fountain pens today, if you ask someone who is in retail for fountain pens, like what makes a good fountain pen nib, they would say, oh, well, the nicer fountain pen nibs are usually made for 14, 18, 21. Like they'll talk about gold nibs, and that's like kind of a must-have. So titanium, which is what we use to make the Monoc today, it sits kind of outside of that, which is tough, I think, for the language of retail and fountain pens, because I'm not going to say that all titanium nibs are good or all titanium nibs are bad, but it really depends on how you make your titanium nib, if it is a good nib or a bad nib. And I think you could say that for anything like steel or gold as well, but titanium nibs have definitely gotten mixed reviews in the past. very particular. Some folks really like them and some folks really do not like them. So I've picked a camp to manufacture my first nib, and that's very controversial. And people say, oh, titanium is a terrible material to make nibs out of. And I say, well, hold on. This is a different architecture, different structure, and it has different benefits. But the gold nibs, I know very little about gold nibs. I'll be totally honest. I own a few. I bought a vintage gold nibbed pen at the DC Fountain Pen Show in 2017. And it was the first time I'd actually owned a gold nib pen. And it was a flexible nib, and it was vintage, and it was amazing. Nice. And I remember, I think it was that show or another show that year where I met, God, I'm blanking on his name, but there's a nibsmith, and he was educating me about all different types of pen manufacturing history and challenges and engineering. And this was something that kept coming up. How did they produce these nibs that feel this certain way? And, people had said that, oh, there's so-and-so in the community is doing scanning electron microscope to figure out all the exactly the gold composition. And so-and-so owns the tooling from this factory in America. And there are these people in the community that you can kind of piece together, and maybe you could recreate the gold nib. But immediately I was like, I don't know about gold manufacturing at all. And I think I don't know, that there's certain regulations when you work with large volumes of gold to own large volumes of gold, and to process it, you need to have a way to refine your scraps. You need to manage your scraps very carefully because the cost is extremely high.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you have to
lock
it up and whatnot. You need a safe. Yeah.
In a proper safe.
But
so I was
Tim, you have a lot of gold in your house, right? That's no problem at all.
I do, and that's why I have the safe. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, the safe is key. I just
most of the gold I have are in nibs, but go ahead. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, I think it's a great challenge for someone right now. I don't know that I'll tackle it. In fact, I'll say it's not on my radar right now. I know it's there. I know there's opportunity. But what I think is really great is that I don't know. I haven't tried this nib, so I won't say anything about the quality or what have you. But Magna Carta is working on a flexible gold nib.
Yeah, I heard
good things.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see who is showing up to make things that the community wants. Because if you asked a business guy to sit down, or businesswoman to sit down and say, oh, well, let's start a fountain pen brand, would they say, we're going to tackle the 14 karat gold? It's not really a business. Yeah. It's not a good business idea. You would do something
really
else.
particular. It's really particular.
It's from the heart. You have to believe in this. You have to love it. So when I see Magna Carta producing this and the gold nib and their evolution from their steel nibs and what they've done with the number 8 size and their titanium
number 10
nibs,
size,
and the number 10 size,
it's creative.
which I haven't seen in person yet, but I really want to see one next time I go to a pen show. But I am excited that they're bringing their enthusiasm and their passion, and they're able to create that product. Whether or not that achieves the Waterman number 2 criteria, unclear, but it seems that they're headed in that direction. They're headed in a direction to create this type of product. So I'm very excited. So knowing this, I probably would be less likely to also do it, because if they're doing it very well, maybe it's less of an opportunity for us to split the market share on it. It's not as good of an idea or as juicy of an idea. So I'm very careful as to what I do. And I often look around the room, quite literally at the fountain pen show. I'll look around the room and I say, who's here and what's missing? And the first time I produced a fountain pen, it was there was not a lot of pocket pens being produced. You had the Kaweco Sport, maybe the Supra, and some brands would produce some makers would produce a maker pen out of that's pocketable. But I didn't see a lot of screw to post. I didn't see a lot of really tight engineering. Big nib, small pen seemed to be something that the enthusiasts were doing, hacking bigger or vintage nibs into pocket pens. So I saw the Jovo number 6 as a platform for this, and I said, oh, that's a space where I really can exist on my own and I can produce for this. And now it's become very popular, which is great. I think it's awesome. I love pocket pens. So now there's popularity in pocket pens. Fantastic. And many makers have joined in creating and adding to this area, which is fantastic. So I don't know. I think whenever I think about materials and I think about what's missing from the community, it leads me to make something hopefully that's not there. And if it is there, I think I want to have an opinion as to why I'm producing it as well. Because I don't like to compete with people. I like to have peers. I like to have a community of makers who all bring something new to the table. And I think largely in fountain pens, we have this. And it's a very unique experience to be in a community where there's less, it's so close and so small that there is like a really tight relationship between a lot of the different makers and manufacturers, and between the customers. They feel that energy. They don't want to say, well, I'm camp this pen or camp that pen. So I think with what I see from
I think in
Magna
general,
Carta, I
you
think
know,
I'll let
the
them.
pen community is really supportive to each other, and it's not really, I don't really feel a competitive feeling, competitive vibe at all.
I agree 100%. It's unique,
Yeah.
and I love that about this community.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's
good.
great.
And Kieran and I have a good rapport, like of Magna Carta. We talk at the shows. He's seen my stuff. He gave me advice once, and I was like looking at his stuff. It was great.
Kieran is a great
it's
guy.
good. So
He has a lot of
it's
knowledge about things.
yeah.
Wow.
And he's built that knowledge from the ground up. They weren't
Yeah.
making pens before. He really built that. It's incredible. So I love to
Yeah.
see people trying to tackle this challenge, because I know I'm terrified of the refining of gold and keeping gold in my North Philadelphia warehouse. Maybe it's not the best. Maybe it's not the best place for me to be manufacturing with gold.
Yeah,
But
maybe not.
yeah, but it's on the topic of materials. It's a challenge for me. When I looked at the fountain pen landscape, I saw a lot of the maker materials that are cast in small batches. Maybe the rods are like 12 inches long, and they're like a little bit like, they're not like precision materials. And when I decided to make fountain pens, I predominantly was working in aluminum, brass, copper, stainless steel, titanium, because these are like precision materials. I can get them in long bars, which fit into the production equipment that I've invested in. So I can't even work with many of the Jonathan Brooks materials or any of these like maker materials. I can't work with them. They don't work in my machines. I would have to buy different equipment and come up with different process to work with them.
Sure.
So what's great about that is when I look around the room at the Fountain Pen Show, I see many makers working with these materials. I say, great, they will work with those materials. They're beautiful. Everyone who's doing it that has a little bit that they have to offer with these materials, great. I'm not going to work with those materials. I'll just work with metal.
Yeah.
And when I want to have something colorful, I'll do anodizing. I'll anodize aluminum. And that's been definitely rising in popularity. But we have like some specialty aluminum finishes, like really cool fades, mixture of matte and gloss. And we actually, the toughest thing about this process is we don't control it. We have a vendor that we work with who does our anodizing, and of that pen, that's the only thing that we don't do in-house. So it's been a challenge to manage, how do we produce things that fit into the community's mindset of like something colorful or a splash of this, or because we see this, this beautiful Aurora here, it's got so much depth in terms of the material. And then if you compare that to like a brass pen, it's a tough comparison. If someone really feels something when they see that material, I can't match that, which is okay. So I've been thinking more about texture and thinking more about patterns, like I showed you a little bit of a sneak preview before. And then we're working with a bit of titanium, which we can anodize here in-house because it's a different process from aluminum anodizing. Now, in the future, we're hopefully going to be able to bring aluminum anodizing in-house, and that would enable us to really open up our ability to create multiple colors in-house, which would be super, super
that would
special.
Be really cool.
We control
that
aspect.
Really cool.
It'd be super cool.
Yeah.
Only problem is right now we're not zoned for it, and you do need a specific type of zoning in the city if you want to do that type of manufacturing. But in the future, in our new workshop, which we'll have some information about soon, hopefully. I'm keeping my voice down because my neighbor's upstairs. But in the new workshop, we will have some more space, and it's zoned correctly so that we could do anodizing in-house, and we have plenty of square footage there to be able to build out our own anodizing line. And it might be 2 or 3 years before we get there, but it's definitely on the table because it would enable us to really control
that would be really cool.
the way
That's
we
the next
present
step.
our material.
Yeah,
it's a huge step.
It's the next step.
It's a huge step. And it's like we would have done it here before if we were zoned for it. But unfortunately, we need to get an EPA license to do that, to manage the anodizing correctly, to manage our chemicals. Yeah, a lot of politics. You have to check your boxes. You got to check your boxes.
All right.
Health and safety is important.
Definitely. Ian, we're almost here at the end of the show, but before we end the show, I always want to ask, you for a question for our next guest.
Oh, awesome.
You can ask anything.
What is your favorite non-fountain pen hobby?
That's a good one.
Nice.
None.
Who knows? Because I don't know who this guest is. If they're manufacturing or design.
I will tell you who is going to be our guest. It's Adrian, or I think I will butcher his name, but it's Adrian Barqueñas. He's from Mexico, and he is an amazing, amazing artist on Instagram. You should definitely check him out. It's Calligraphy y Journal, and he does some amazing calligraphy work. You should check him out. And I'm going to ask him what is his favorite non-pen hobby. So that would be quite interesting.
Cool.
Definitely. All right, guys, we're here at the end of the show. Tim, I would like to thank you for being my co-host again. It was amazing.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. And next week, we will see you again. And hopefully soon after with Visconti again. So we have some upcoming podcasts to look forward to. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Ian.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Ian, thank you so much for taking the time and putting all the machines off for about an hour to chat with us about pens. It was a lot of fun. We've learned a lot about your company and some things that are coming up and about the complications that you have to deal with and things like that. So I really appreciate that. And hopefully we see you around on the pen shows. Maybe you come to the Dutch pen show. I'm going to talk you into that for sure as well. So we'll have a chat about that later. And once again, Ian, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And I'll see you in the Netherlands for that show. It'll be great.
Okay. That's a promise. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, make sure to do that right now. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to head over to Hemingway Jones, which has some amazing videos and reviews as well. So you definitely should check that out. And if you're on YouTube anyway, go over to Schon DSGN, because I just watched some older videos of Ian and he was really cute and young back then. So you should check that out too. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.